This is the first time I'm using the edition that we're using, so it might be different than the other one. So if you really like this, you could take a picture of it and keep it. So let me just stretch up here a little bit. Verbal communication is the principal means through which we maintain ongoing relationships. So whether you're online or in person, we rely on our verbal, and that's why we tend to have unintended messages as well, because we don't verify, we don't understand exactly what a word may mean or how that person is using that word. I know generationally, you use language, and I am always wanting to qualify because I don't understand certain language being used. Cooperative verbal education, verbal communication, is when things are easily understood. So when things are easily understood, the speaker also has to realize that the listener might not understand very current dialectal sayings or a new and different definition for something to how it is used in a local or a dialect way. So we take ownership with I language, and that's key. We're going to start looking at that. We tend to say, you did this and you did that, and rather than I dislike it when you did this. And so you're taking ownership. And that's the number one way to reduce conflict, because when you're doing the you, people just visually see that hand coming down on them, figuratively. So we want to include we, or putting I first. So cooperative principle, we make our conversational contributions as informative, honest, relevant, and clear as required. This requires awareness of situational characteristics. And above and beyond, we want to be honest. You know, we've heard of those expressions, little white lies. I don't know what that means. We want to make sure that communication is reciprocated. So honesty, if you put forth honesty, you want and you should receive honesty. And that's called cooperative principle. So the reverse, you argue loudly, they're going to argue loudly. Misunderstandings, misperceiving the thoughts, feelings, or beliefs expressed in another's verbal communication. If a message must be error-free, or if it's controversial, don't use email or text messaging to communicate it. Again, even though brevity is great because we get the message quickly, we may be leaving out substantial information. So if you are talking about something that's very controversial, use another method of communicating that. So as I said before, and this slide shows it a little bit better, you language places the focus and attention and blame on the other person, whereas the I emphasizes ownership of your own feelings, and it's perfect. I dislike it when you smoke cigarettes in the house. I dislike it. I dislike the smell of smoke in the house. Okay, you can even take the you out totally. This takes practice, and it's called confrontational assertiveness, and it's the best because it reduces the confrontation. So we love we language. When you're in a group, you want to say we did this and we did that, and you can even say it in a conflict situation. You know, let's say you planned on going to the movies this weekend and the other person, decided to change their mind the last minute. Instead of saying, oh, I hate it when you change your mind on this. We agreed that we were going to go to the movie. I understand something may have come up. Could we agree on? See, sounds a little bit better. Then you may get your way. So barriers to cooperative verbal communication. So we're going to go over all of these. The slides have it. So let's take the first one, which is verbal aggression. And I just want everybody to be able. Verbal aggression, the tendency to attack others' self-concepts rather than their positions on the topics. We do this all the time. We don't separate the person saying it from what they're saying. So, I hate Jim. Jim thinks X, Y, and Z. You don't hate Jim, but you don't like the language or the behavior or the ideas that are spoken. It has nothing to do with the flesh and blood. Microaggression, communication stressors directed toward members of underrepresented groups. So we tend to say certain words that may offend. And when I'm talking about bullying, though, to me, that's criminal. So I think that when we're thinking about agreements, we want to use our words more effectively with the I and the we. The next way is deception, using uninformative, untruth, irrelevant, or vague language for the purpose of misleading others. We don't want to do that. You may think back to a time where you purposefully did that. And it says here, which many of us don't realize, that concealment is the most, by not saying something, is also deception. So we definitely have some defensive communication measures. Impolite messages delivered in response to suggestions, criticism, or perceived slight. So your slides don't go over this. So I am going to go to your book, and we're going to talk about superiority messages. So we know that this isn't rocket science, so you can probably, I did find the picture of that conversations on page 212. I thought it was. So the first one is superiority messages. And when you're having a conversation, you may be spouting or listening to people that say, hold on, I'll get to that page in a moment. Okay, so on the bottom of page 221 is a great little snapshot. So superiority message. I have more experience and I've been doing this longer than you. So you can see that one person wants to be the smartest person in the room. One person is saying, you know, I've done this before, I've been a leader, and that's a defense mechanism. They want to take charge. Then we have indifference messages. This is supposed to interest me, and I know we say that a lot. I'm supposed to remember geometry. So it's an indifference. You haven't yet learned how to apply it to yourself, and you're still learning, and that's the type of messages you may hear. That's supposed to be important to me, even in every day. And it's an indifference, so show them how it's supposed to be important to them. Control messages. There's no point to further discussion. I consider this matter closed. And that's one way to stop confrontation or any type of they're killer statements. They just kill the conversation, but they control it and they got what they wanted. But the issue may not be resolved. And dogmatic. Why would I change? I've always done it like this. And people my age are more of the dogmatic because we've been on the planet longer, and we tend to think that if it was good enough for me, it's good enough for you. So you want to curb how your defense communication is, but you also want to realize, because you're the listener as well from our preceding chapter, that when you hear these are messages that can have an emotional attachment to you, and therefore you have a negative input. So the last thing we're going to talk about is communication apprehension, which is a fear or anxiety associated with interaction. I know we have communication apprehension for public speaking because we don't get too much practice at that. So we have a fear of the unknown. So the more you're taking courses and the more you're interacting in public matters, even discussion boards, because you want to curb how you're saying things to fit the context. And for our purposes, the context is professionalism. Communication plans, mental maps describing how encounters unfold. Um, Even you're going to your boss and you're trying, you mentally have a communication plan of what you're going to say first or second. Job interviews. Everybody knows a couple of questions that you're going to be asked. Why do you want this job? Tell me a little bit about yourself. So you have a mental maps of how you're going to be saying these things. So communication verbally, the key is not to offend. The key is empathy, honesty. So language is important, the how you say what you say during the context. And I find that most people don't have boundaries between how I say things at home in my kitchen, how I say things with my friends, and then how I say things in a job interview or in the workplace, or how I respectfully greet someone that I don't know. These are things that I feel are sometimes weak. Okay, guess what's coming next? Chapter 9, communicating nonverbally. I'll see you then.